Pay attention to what you're about to see. This footage was captured on a cell phone camera in the backyard of a Scottsdale, Arizona home. You're looking at a woman sitting on concrete, and wrapped around her body is an 18-foot Burmese python. She's screaming, but here's what you need to notice. Look at her hands. They're not fighting the snake. They're positioned almost deliberately. This 30-second clip would become the most crucial piece of evidence in a murder investigation that would expose a web of jealousy, deception, and betrayal. Because what looks like a terrifying encounter with a dangerous animal, it was actually something far more sinister. And the person holding the camera knew exactly what was about to happen. You know that feeling when someone's passion becomes their entire identity? That was Nicole Hartman. In the spring of 2016, if you lived in Scottsdale and mentioned exotic animals, someone would inevitably say, "Oh, you need to talk to Nicole." At 36 years old, Nicole had built something remarkable. Her home wasn't just a house, it was a sanctuary. She ran Desert Scales Rescue, a nonprofit dedicated to rehabilitating abandoned exotic reptiles. Snakes, lizards, even the occasional tortoise that people bought on impulse and couldn't handle. Nicole took them all in, nursed them back to health, and found them proper homes. Her neighbors had mixed feelings about living next to what was essentially a reptile zoo, but most respected Nicole's dedication. She'd give educational talks at local schools, teaching kids about conservation and responsible pet ownership. Her social media following had grown to over 40,000 people, who tuned in for her weekly videos about snake behavior and reptile care. But Nicole's true pride and joy was Sable, her Burmese python. She'd rescued Sable 8 years earlier from a roadside attraction where the snake had been kept in deplorable conditions. Now fully grown at 18 feet and weighing close to 150 pounds, Sable was gentle as a lamb, at least with Nicole. The bond between them was something special. Nicole would often say Sable understood her better than most people did. Here's the thing about Nicole, though. She was trusting, maybe too trusting, especially when it came to family. 6 months before everything fell apart, Nicole made a decision that would cost her everything. Her half-sister, 31-year-old Vanessa Cortez, showed up at her doorstep in November 2015 with 2 suitcases and a sob story. Vanessa's marriage had imploded. Her husband had filed for divorce, and she claimed she had nowhere to go. Could she stay with Nicole? Just temporarily, just until she got back on her feet? Nicole didn't hesitate. She cleared out her spare bedroom and welcomed Vanessa with open arms. They'd never been particularly close growing up. Different mothers, different lives. But family was family, right? The first few weeks seemed fine. Vanessa helped around the house, even assisted with feeding the animals. She'd hold the rats and mice Nicole kept frozen for the snakes, something that made most people squeamish. She seemed genuinely interested in the rescue operation. But people who knew Nicole started noticing changes. Her best friend, Rachel Torres, would later tell investigators that Nicole seemed stressed. She'd mention Vanessa in passing, little comments about money going missing, or Vanessa making long-distance calls on Nicole's phone. Nothing major, just annoying. Rachel had been friends with Nicole since college. They'd met at Arizona State University in a biology class, and while Rachel had gone on to become a veterinarian, Nicole had followed her passion for reptiles. Every Thursday, they'd meet for coffee at their favorite spot on Camelback Road. But starting in late February 2016, Nicole began canceling those meetings. "She'd text me last minute," Rachel later recalled. "Always an excuse, too busy with the animals. Had to run errands." Looking back, I think she was embarrassed. She didn't want to admit things were bad with Vanessa. The truth was, things were deteriorating fast. Nicole's other close friend, David Martinez, who volunteered at the rescue on weekends, noticed that supplies were running low. Food for the animals, bedding material, heating lamps, things that Nicole always kept well stocked. "I asked her about it in March," David said. "She just waved it off, said she'd been tight on donations that month. But the donation page on her website showed they'd actually had a good month. Something wasn't adding up." Then came the big one. In early April 2016, Nicole discovered that $8,000 was missing from the Desert Scales Rescue Fund, the account that donors trusted her to manage responsibly, the account that kept the lights on and the animals fed. She'd been reconciling the accounts on April 10th when she noticed the discrepancies. 3 withdrawals over the past 2 months, each around $2,500 to $2,800, all made from an ATM near the Scottsdale Fashion Square Mall. Nicole didn't shop at that mall. She barely had time to shop anywhere. But Vanessa did. Vanessa had been spotted there multiple times, according to the timestamps on social media posts from her friends. Designer bags, expensive dinners, spa treatments, all while claiming to be broke from her divorce. Nicole confronted Vanessa on April 12th. Neighbors reported hearing raised voices that evening. Nicole's Ring doorbell camera, the one facing her driveway, captured Vanessa storming out at 9:47 p.m., getting into her car and speeding off. She came back 3 hours later. Mrs. Patricia Gomez, who lived 2 houses down, was walking her dog when Vanessa returned. She was on her phone, Patricia told police, arguing with someone. I heard her say something like, "She owes me. After everything our family put me through, she owes me." I thought it was about the divorce. Now I wonder if she was talking about Nicole. What Nicole didn't know was that Vanessa had been doing more than just stealing money. She'd been going through Nicole's personal documents, her will, her insurance policies, and what she found made her blood boil. On April 14th, just 2 days after their confrontation about the stolen money, Nicole made a decision. She drove to her attorney's office and updated her will. Desert Scales Rescue would receive her house and remaining assets to continue the work she loved. Vanessa, her only living relative, would get a small personal effects allowance of $5,000. That was it. Nicole's attorney, Margaret Chen, remembered that appointment vividly. Nicole was calm but determined, Margaret said. She told me she'd given Vanessa chance after chance, but she couldn't trust her anymore. She said, "I'd rather my life's work continue than have it squandered by someone who doesn't understand what it means to care about something bigger than yourself." For Vanessa, who'd somehow gotten access to Nicole's email and saw the appointment confirmation, this was unacceptable. She'd already burned through the $8,000 she'd stolen. Her credit cards were maxed out. Her divorce had left her broke. And now Nicole was going to give everything to a bunch of snakes? Let me paint you a picture of what happened next. April 19th, 2016, a Tuesday morning. Nicole's next-door neighbor, Marcus Chen, was getting ready for work when he heard screaming. Not the kind of scream you hear from kids playing in a pool. This was terror. Pure, absolute terror. Marcus rushed to his back window and saw Nicole in her backyard. Sable was wrapped around her torso and neck. Nicole was screaming, trying to pull the snake off, but an 18-foot python constricting with its full force is nearly impossible to fight. But here's what made Marcus freeze for a crucial 3 seconds before calling 911. Vanessa was there, standing 10 feet away, holding her phone, filming, not helping, not screaming for help, filming. By the time Marcus dialed 911, grabbed a broom, and ran outside to help, it was already too late. Nicole had stopped moving. Vanessa was now screaming too, a complete shift from the calm, documenting observer she'd been just moments before. The paramedics arrived at 7:23 a.m. They pronounced Nicole dead at the scene at 7:31 a.m. The police showed up 6 minutes later, and that's when Vanessa's performance really began. She was hysterical, sobbing, explaining through gasps that she'd come outside to find Nicole already being constricted by Sable. She'd tried to help but was too scared of the snake. She'd filmed it because she was in shock and didn't know what else to do. People do strange things in traumatic situations, right? The responding officers, initially sympathetic, carefully removed Sable from Nicole's body. The snake wasn't aggressive. In fact, it seemed almost docile as they transported it to a temporary holding facility at the local animal control. At first glance, this looked like a tragic accident. A woman who worked with dangerous animals finally had her luck run out. These things happen, but Detective Sarah Mendoza, who arrived at 8:15 a.m., wasn't buying it. She'd been on the force for 16 years, and something felt wrong. The scene was too staged. Nicole's body position didn't make sense. If she'd been attacked while doing morning feeding, why was she in the middle of the yard, away from all the enclosures? Why were none of the other animals disturbed? And then there was Vanessa's story. It kept changing. Small details at first. What time she'd come outside, where she'd been standing, whether she'd tried to help or been too frozen with fear. Detective Mendoza made a decision. "We're treating this as a potential crime scene," she told her team. "Lock it down. I want everything processed." The medical examiner's office took custody of Nicole's body at 10:47 a.m. Dr. Raymond Park, the chief medical examiner, began his preliminary examination that afternoon. What he found would turn this entire case on its head. Nicole Hartman hadn't died from constriction, at least not the way everyone assumed. Her cause of death was asphyxiation, yes, but the timeline was all wrong. The bruising patterns on her neck and torso indicated that she'd been dead or nearly dead before Sable had fully constricted around her. The snake's grip marks were superficial, post-mortem or peri-mortem at best. But here's the real kicker. Dr. Park found small injection marks on Nicole's upper left arm, partially hidden by the snake's coiling. And when the toxicology report came back 3 days later, it revealed a lethal dose of diazepam in her system, more than enough to sedate her to unconsciousness. Someone had drugged Nicole Hartman. Then they'd used her own beloved snake to finish the job. Detective Mendoza requested a warrant for Vanessa's room on April 22nd. The search team moved through that spare bedroom with meticulous care, photographing everything, cataloging every item. In the back of Vanessa's closet, hidden inside a shoebox, they found a partially empty bottle of diazepam tablets. The prescription wasn't Vanessa's. It wasn't Nicole's either. Further investigation revealed it had been prescribed to Vanessa's ex-husband for anxiety, and she'd taken it when she left. They also found Nicole's modified will, the one that had cut Vanessa out. It had been crumpled up and thrown in the trash, then apparently retrieved and smoothed out. There were pen marks on it, angry scratches where someone had crossed out the rescue organization's name over and over. But the real treasure was Vanessa's laptop. The forensic team discovered she'd been researching snake behavior for weeks. Her browser history was a roadmap of premeditation. How much force does a python use to constrict? Can a sedated person trigger a snake's prey response? Do snakes attack humans unprovoked? Life insurance payout for accidental death. How long does diazepam stay in system? Crushing diazepam tablets into liquid. Python feeding behavior triggers. How to stress a snake. The searches went back to April 3rd, more than 2 weeks before Nicole's death. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was planned, calculated, and cold. What investigators also discovered on the laptop were drafts of emails Vanessa had been writing but never sent. One, dated April 15th, was particularly chilling. "Dear Nicole, I hope you know that what you're doing is wrong. I'm your sister, your only family, and you're giving everything to animals that don't even know who you are. You'll regret this. I'll make sure of it." Another draft, from April 17th, just 2 days before the murder. "Sometimes people get what they deserve. Sometimes karma needs a little help." Detective Mendoza brought Vanessa in for questioning on April 25th. The interview room at the Scottsdale Police Department was small, windowless, and equipped with cameras that captured every moment of what would become a masterclass in interrogation. Vanessa came in confident. She'd lawyered up by then, a public defender named Thomas Reeves who advised her to say nothing. But Vanessa couldn't help herself. She wanted to explain, to make the detectives understand. "Nicole and I had our problems," she said, despite her lawyer's warning look. "But I loved my sister. I would never hurt her." Detective Mendoza slid a photo across the table. The browser history. Every single damning search. Vanessa's face went pale. "I was just curious. Nicole talked about the snakes all the time. I wanted to understand them better." "And the life insurance searches?" "I didn't know if Nicole had insurance. I was worried about funeral costs." Before she died, silence. Then came the next photo, the diazepam bottle with her ex-husband's name clearly visible on the prescription label. That's not mine. It was in your closet, Vanessa. Someone must have planted it. In the room you'd been living in for 6 months? The room Nicole gave you out of kindness? That's when Vanessa's composure cracked, just for a moment. A flash of anger crossed her face, raw, undisguised anger, and Detective Mendoza saw it. "She was selfish," Vanessa blurted out, then immediately looked at her lawyer, who was shaking his head vigorously. She had everything, the house, the business, people who loved her, and she was going to give it all away to reptiles. Reptiles, while I had nothing. "So you decided to take it?" Vanessa realized her mistake and clamped her mouth shut. But the damage was done. She'd revealed motive in her own words, but they still had a problem. All of this was circumstantial. Yes, Vanessa had means and motive. Yes, she'd been researching suspicious topics. But where was the proof she'd actually administered the drugs? Where was the evidence that she'd deliberately placed Nicole in a position where Sable would constrict? The answer came from an unexpected source. Marcus Chen, the neighbor who'd witnessed the attack, couldn't sleep. Night after night, he kept replaying what he'd seen. Vanessa standing there, filming. Something about it haunted him. On April 28th, he called Detective Mendoza. "I've been thinking about that video," he said. "The one Vanessa took on her phone. Have you seen it?" The detective had requested the phone, but Vanessa's lawyer had fought the warrant. They were still waiting for a judge's approval. "What about it?" Mendoza asked. "She was calm," Marcus said. "I keep thinking about it. She wasn't panicking, she wasn't screaming for help, she was just filming, like she was documenting something she expected to happen, like she was watching a movie she'd already seen." That conversation prompted Mendoza to revisit all the video evidence they did have. Nicole's Ring doorbell camera had limited range, but it captured the driveway and part of the side yard. The detective spent hours reviewing footage from the days leading up to Nicole's death, and then she found it. April 18th, the night before Nicole died. At 11:34 p.m., Vanessa exits the house through the side door. She's carrying something small, a container of some kind. She walks toward the area where Sable's outdoor enclosure was located during warm nights. The footage is grainy, but you can see Vanessa opening the enclosure, reaching in, and doing something. She's there for 6 minutes. Then she closes the enclosure and goes back inside. What was she doing? Detective Mendoza had a theory, and it was diabolical. She contacted Dr. Michael Brennan, a herpetologist at Arizona State University, who specialized in python behavior. She explained the case and asked a crucial question. If someone wanted to make a python aggressive toward a specific person, how would they do it? Dr. Brennan's answer was chilling. Burmese pythons respond to scent and heat signatures. If you wanted to trigger a feeding response, you'd rub prey scent on the target. Rats, mice, anything the snake associates with food. Or you could stress the snake beforehand, deprive it of food, agitate it, make it defensive. A stressed python is unpredictable. It might strike at anything it perceives as a threat. He continued. These snakes are normally docile with their handlers. They recognize familiar people through scent and behavior patterns. For one to attack its primary caretaker would require significant provocation or confusion. If someone deliberately contaminated the handler with prey scent while simultaneously stressing the animal, you could create a perfect storm. The warrant for Vanessa's phone finally came through on May 3rd. The video she'd captured of Nicole's final moments was on there, but so was something else. A second video, filmed the night before, April 18th at 11:34 p.m. Pay attention to this part, because this is the footage from the pre-intro, the evidence that cracked the case wide open. Vanessa had set up her phone on a tripod in the backyard, positioning it to record her interaction with Sable's enclosure. Why? Maybe as insurance, maybe as a sick memento. The psychology of killers often defies logic. In the video, you can see Vanessa opening Sable's enclosure. She's wearing gloves. She reaches into a small cooler and pulls out what appears to be a dead rat, standard python food. But instead of feeding Sable, she uses the rat to rub scent all over a black tank top. Nicole's black tank top, the one she'd be wearing the next morning. Then Vanessa does something even more disturbing. She uses a stick to poke and prod at Sable, agitating the snake, making it strike at the stick repeatedly. She's deliberately stressing the animal, putting it on edge. You can hear Sable's hissing on the recording, see the snake coiling defensively, see its body tensing with each jab. The video is 9 minutes long. When it ends, Vanessa picks up the phone and you can hear her voice. "Tomorrow morning, big sister. Tomorrow you get what you deserve." She'd filmed her own confession, but investigators found even more. On Vanessa's phone were text messages between her and an unknown number, later traced to a burner phone that was never recovered. The texts, from April 16th and 17th, were cryptic but revealing. "Did you get what I asked for? Yes, but I don't want to know what you're using it for. You'll read about it in the news. Trust me." The unknown number was eventually identified through cell tower pings and surveillance footage as belonging to Vanessa's ex-husband's brother, Marcus Cortez, who had a criminal record for drug trafficking. He'd supplied her with the syringe and needles, though he later claimed he thought she wanted them for personal use and had no idea about the murder plot. But how did Nicole end up wearing that specific tank top? How did Vanessa ensure everything would go according to plan? The answer came from Nicole's phone records. At 6:15 a.m. on April 19th, Vanessa had sent Nicole a text. "Hey, can you check on Sable? I think I heard weird noises from his enclosure. I'm too scared to look. Please? I know you're still mad at me, but I don't want anything to happen to him." Nicole, always concerned about her animals, had immediately gotten dressed, grabbing the tank top from her laundry basket where Vanessa had carefully placed it the night before, and gone outside. Security footage from inside the house, from a camera Nicole had installed in the living room to monitor some of her smaller reptiles, captured what happened next. The timestamp showed 6:23 a.m. Nicole walks through the living room toward the back door. Vanessa follows her, calls her name. Nicole turns around, and Vanessa moves close, saying something the audio doesn't pick up clearly. Then you see it. Vanessa's right hand moves to Nicole's upper left arm, a quick motion. Nicole flinches, looks confused, touches her arm. She says something. The audio enhancer later revealed it was, "Did you just... What did you do?" But Vanessa is already stepping back, pointing toward the backyard, urging Nicole to go check on Sable. Nicole staggers slightly. She's already feeling the effects of the drug, but her concern for Sable overrides her confusion. She continues outside. The diazepam injection had come with a massive dose, enough to sedate her within minutes. Vanessa had crushed several tablets and mixed them with water to create a concentrated solution. The injection would have been quick. A small needle, a fast plunge. Nicole probably felt it, probably turned to ask what Vanessa had done, but the sedative worked fast. Within 2 minutes, she would have been dizzy, disoriented. That's when Vanessa had guided her away from the enclosure, positioning her in the middle of the yard. Cell phone location data showed Vanessa's phone was stationary in that spot for approximately 90 seconds, long enough to arrange Nicole's body, to make sure she was in the right position, and then she'd opened Sable's enclosure fully. The snake, agitated from the previous night's abuse and smelling strong prey scent on Nicole's clothing, had done what stressed pythons do. It had struck defensively, then begun to constrict what it perceived as either a threat or prey. Nicole, already sedated and unable to fight effectively, had died in the coils of the animal she'd loved most in the world. The forensic timeline was damning. The medical examiner determined that Nicole had been conscious but severely impaired when Sable began constricting. The diazepam had slowed her reflexes, made her unable to properly defend herself. She would have known what was happening, but been powerless to stop it. It was, in the words of Dr. Park, a conscious nightmare. Detective Mendoza arrested Vanessa Cortez on May 5, 2016. The evidence was overwhelming now. The video confessions, both the premeditation footage and the murder itself, the toxicology report, the browser history, the financial motive, the text messages arranging for the syringe, the security footage showing the injection. All of it painted a picture of cold, calculated murder. But Vanessa still had one card to play. Her defense attorney argued that the video from April 18th didn't prove intent to kill. Maybe Vanessa was just playing a prank, trying to scare Nicole. Maybe she didn't realize how dangerous it would be. The prosecution's response was simple. They played that final line from the video again. "Tomorrow morning, big sister. Tomorrow you get what you deserve." No one pranks someone with the phrase, "you get what they deserve." The prosecution also brought in Dr. Brennan, the herpetologist, who testified that anyone with even basic knowledge of python behavior would know that combining prey scent, an agitated snake, and a sedated victim would likely be fatal. "This wasn't ignorance," he said. "This was weaponization of an animal." The trial began on November 14, 2016, and lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution presented 47 pieces of evidence, including the videos, toxicology reports, and testimony from Dr. Brennan about python behavior. The defense tried to paint Vanessa as a troubled woman going through a difficult divorce, someone who'd made poor decisions but never intended to kill her sister. They argued that Nicole's death was still partially accidental, that Vanessa couldn't have known for certain that Sable would attack. The jury didn't buy it. After deliberating for just 6 hours, they returned a guilty verdict on December 6, 2016. Vanessa Cortez was convicted of first-degree premeditated murder, tampering with evidence, theft, and animal cruelty. She received life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder charge, plus an additional 15 years for the other charges to be served concurrently. The judge called it one of the most calculated and cold-blooded murders he'd seen in his 30 years on the bench. During sentencing, the judge addressed Vanessa directly. "You took advantage of your sister's kindness, her generosity, and her love for animals. You turned that love into a weapon. You planned this murder with meticulous detail, showing no remorse and no mercy. Nicole Hartman trusted you, and you betrayed that trust in the worst possible way." Sable, Nicole's beloved python, was transferred to a reptile sanctuary in Nevada. The staff there reported that the snake showed no signs of aggression and seemed depressed, as if mourning the loss of its caretaker. Sable lived for another 3 years before passing away in 2019, reportedly from failure to thrive, a condition that occurs when captive animals lose the will to live after losing their primary bond. Desert Scale's rescue was dissolved, but Nicole's work lived on. Her friend Rachel Torres partnered with several other exotic animal advocates to create the Nicole Hartman Memorial Reptile Sanctuary, funded by donations from Nicole's social media followers and the local community. Today, it rescues and rehabilitates over 200 animals a year. The sanctuary operates out of a larger facility in Tempe, with 6 full-time staff members and dozens of volunteers. They've expanded Nicole's mission to include educational programs in schools across Arizona, teaching children about responsible exotic pet ownership and conservation. Rachel often shows Nicole's old videos during presentations, keeping her friend's legacy alive. Nicole's story sparked a broader conversation about the risks of exotic pet ownership, but more importantly, about trust and betrayal within families. How someone could exploit kindness, manipulate love, and murder for money. In the end, Vanessa's greed destroyed 2 lives, her sister's and her own, and the snake that had been Nicole's pride and joy became the unwitting weapon in a murder that shocked Arizona and captivated the nation. Nicole Hartman was 36 years old when she died. She dedicated her life to protecting creatures that most people feared, showing the world that with patience and love, even the most misunderstood animals could be understood. She deserved better than to die at the hands of someone she'd trusted, someone she'd welcomed into her home, someone who was supposed to be family. But Nicole's legacy isn't about how she died. It's about how she lived, with compassion, with purpose, and with an unshakable belief that every living creature deserved a second chance, even the ones who didn't deserve it. Rest in peace, Nicole Hartman. Your work continues, your memory endures, and the animals you fought so hard to protect are still being saved in your name.